The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Well, hello everyone, and thank you for joining us for our webinar from the Agile Business Consortium. I'm Jenny Bailey, and I'm delighted to bring you this series of webinars. We start with, my guest today is Kathy Berkidge, who has been in mindfulness actually for the last 20 years. She's an Agile coach and an Agile trainer. She joins us all the way from Melbourne in Australia. So it's good evening to you, Kathy. Are you there?
Good morning and good evening.
Good evening.
Yes, I am. Good morning and good evening, everybody.
Thank you for joining us. I do appreciate it for being there and sharing your Friday evening with us. What we really wanted to talk about today, and we were discussing obviously this webinar and how to put it together and the plans we had in place, it really is how mindfulness enables success. And from my point of view, I guess working in the Agile Business Consortium and working with businesses such as we do, mindfulness has really become very much in the lens, I think, of the consortium in the last, 4 to 5 years. But like we've already said, you've actually been in mindfulness now for 20 years, haven't you?
Absolutely. Well, just about 20 years, not exactly, but give or take a few months, I'd say. Yeah, absolutely. Wow. It's certainly not a new thing. It's been around for thousands of years.
Okay. Well, if we can start, let's introduce you. So if you can move the slides on, that would be fantastic. So that's me, and more importantly, Kathy Berkidge. So 30 years in IT across many sectors, as you can see, Agile trainer, consultant, and coach. That's quite a list you've got there, in all honesty. So you definitely know what you're talking about, which again is wonderful that you're joining us this evening for you.
No problem. And the most important thing to remember is I am obsessed with the colour blue. You'll see that through the presentation.
Okay. All right. That's wonderful. That's very IT, I think, isn't it, Blue? Okay. So if we move on, let's discuss why mindfulness. Why is it important? Why should we all be aware of it? And yeah, let's begin with that. That would be wonderful, please.
Sure. So I suppose to start with, I can briefly mention why I got into it nearly 20 years ago. And of course, like all change, like all things, something has to give when some sort of crisis happens. And that's exactly what happened with my life. And I was unlucky enough that, well, I started off with probably what I thought every success in the world. I had a great job, paying 6-figure salary. I had my daughter, who was an elite athlete, training for the Olympics at private school, and I was going to be married. My fiance just got his visa. He was from the USA, and of course, getting visas down here in Australia is a bit hard. So everything was looking perfect, and life couldn't have been better. I just thought this is the pinnacle of things. And unfortunately, one morning I woke up and I thought I'd slept on my arm a bit funny, and I realised it was swollen and horrible. So I went up to the doctor, and 3 hours later I was in intensive care. I developed a massive blood clot that started basically next to my heart and travelled virtually the whole way down my arm and blocked all the blood flow. So it was serious. For the next 3 months I spent most of my time in and out of hospital, which was, well, you know, an experience in itself. I was very, very lucky though. My manager, a wonderful lady who I'll always be grateful to, a lovely lady by the name of Christine, she said to me, look, we know you're sick, we're going to support you. You come and work when you can. Because of all the appointments and because of the illness, I couldn't work full time. So they sort of let me come in and go whenever I could in between treatments, in between appointments. So I was lucky I kept my job. But 6 months down the track, I might have kept my job, but I lost my attitude. I was not a pleasant person to be around. I had a grudge against the world. I was angry at why did it happen to me. And because of this, I pretty much lost everything. My fiance left me. I lost my house because I wasn't paid. I had financial pressure, and all sorts of nasty things happened. And so one day, Christine, after a particularly probably horrible day for me, said, Kathy, we support you. You know, we've tried to do all we can to support you through your illness, but we can't continue with this attitude. Lose it or we're going to have to lose you. And I was outraged. I can't tell you. I just thought, what? How dare you? I've been sick, you know, and I was telling myself I'm fighting and railing against her and thinking, oh. So I went home that night, and by chance I was picking up some groceries, and there was a flyer in the window. mindfulness.
Wow.
Are you stressed? Are you this? Are you that? Come along to a three-week program. Wednesday night, one and a half hours, 7 till 8:30. It was very cheap. Back then, of course, it was the 90s. And so I went along, and even in that 3 weeks, I noticed such a change. I knew straight away, because there's science behind it, there's intellect behind it, there's a lot of rich learning there that's been around. Of course, it comes from Eastern philosophy, so a lot of that appealed to me, but the sheer act of becoming mindful and learning to meditate made such a difference to me that I didn't stop there, and I continued on. I became intense study in weekly class and lots of week-long and 2-week-long retreats. And eventually, about 2007, I actually became one of the teachers at this same meditation centre. So that was a long time ago, and I still teach off and on now, and I've been bringing mindfulness to some of the teams I've been working with, predominantly because they've been trying to work Agile and trying to show them the benefits of being more mindful. Excuse me, I have a bit of a cold, so apologies, everybody.
That is just such an amazing testament, though, in all honesty, to how you've come across mindfulness and what it's done for you, because you're here, which is fantastic.
Yeah, exactly. And luckily I learned so much. Sometimes you have to get to the bottom to be able to know that you have to pick yourself up, and it really forced me to change everything. It's changed everything about me. I would say someone who met me beforehand to people who meet me now, you recognize the physical features, but you wouldn't recognize the person anymore, because I used to be so reactive and combative and full of myself, I suppose, which we all get to sometimes. So it's made a big difference.
Wow. Well, no wonder you're extremely passionate behind the whole subject of mindfulness. It makes, very, very clear sense to us all now. And thank you for sharing that, because that was obviously quite an emotional journey you had, and you're still living in terms of the emotion, not the fact that you're still living, obviously, but you're still living in that emotional journey that's progressing.
Yeah, exactly. And it's lovely to see that it's become quite mainstream. It's not some sort of woo-woo, new age hippie thing anymore. It's now something that it's been studied and recognised as an important skill for leaders and people in the world of every domain. So it's really lovely to see that it's come out of this darkness.
Absolutely. I mean, every conference I go to at the moment, and every exhibition we attend, and seminars in particular, mindfulness seems to be very much there in the organisational structure of culture and leadership at the moment. So, I mean, it seems to be in every bookshop as well. So how would you really describe mindfulness? Obviously, you've told us about your experience and your journey in the topic, as it were, but how would you really describe it? I mean, is it just all about being in the moment and being aware and taking a breath? Is it about that?
It really is. Simply put, it is moment by moment awareness of what it is. So seeing what's actually in front of us openly with full and clear awareness. And it's, as you said, completely being present and accepting of what's happening. But that sounds easy, but you can see by the little presentation, it's about dropping all those judgments and those stories that we tell ourselves that happen 98% unconsciously. Those things, those projections and thought processes that have been ingrained for so long and prevent us from seeing things as they really are. So there's a wonderful definition I read. It's a scientific definition, which is interesting. So mindfulness is described as a thinking process, or moreover, a non-thinking process that does not get hung up on ideas or concepts or memories or plans or perceptions, but it instead just observes phenomena, as in the world, as if it was occurring for the first time. So it's this essence of swapping what is not there, which we think it is from all these mental projections and judgments that we hold around all day, to swapping what is actually there minus all that junkyard. It sounds very easy. It sounds easy enough. But hang on, wait a minute. There's one annoying thing. we often lose our concentration. We often lose our ability to see things clearly. Our mind wanders off, takes flights, gets self-engrossed in thoughts about what's just happening or fretting about what's going to happen. And that unhelpful self-talk goes on and on and on all day, every day. And that's quite the opposite of mindfulness. It's really dropping all that and really being aware and present to, let's drop all that chatter, drop all that internal noise and see things clearly through the lens of mindfulness. There's two parts to it. Go ahead.
I was going to say, it sounds so easy when you sort of say be in the moment and kind of be aware and everything, but we have such stressful lives, don't we? We have so much going on, and with Christmas around the corner at the moment, it seems like everything's speeding up rather than slowing down. So it really is a case that everybody can do this, and that will be a benefit to themselves. You strongly believe that, don't you?
Absolutely. These days, the need to control our attention has never been greater. You know, we've got this constant bombardment of the always switched on world of social media, the internet and emails. Our brains have never been busier. So we're in this kind of state of information overload 99% of the time. So we get overwhelmed, and that means we get distracted. And when we get distracted, it's hard to really be aware of what's really in front of us right here and now and appreciate things. It's, you know, we say this, you've probably all heard it, and it's such a cliche. We need to work smarter and not harder. Easy to say.
It is a cliche, isn't it? We've all heard that one. It's true.
How do you do this? How do you do that?
That's the thing. We're wanting you to tell us, definitely. Because there's like a few misconceptions around mindfulness as well. Like you say, I mean, it's steeped in culture of the Eastern world, really, isn't it? And I can imagine people have been a little bit kind of concerned about taking on, thinking it's a bit of a fluffy kind of concept, but it really is very much, like you say, the neurological science is now behind it. There's been so many studies behind it as well. So it's very much a case that we all need to really take notice of this, don't we?
Absolutely. Mindfulness is 100% needed to cope with this onslaught of information and data overload, and enable us to focus on one thing at a time, and not just focus on one thing at a time, but focus on the right thing, one thing at a time, because we so often get distracted. So we need to just take notice in a more skillful way. As you said, there's so many misconceptions. Yes, it's come from Eastern traditions for more than 5,000 years old, but it's certainly not about some sort of obscure or exotic or religious thing. It's actually stuff that we're already doing. All of us are actually doing it, because all of us can probably recall a time when we're so engrossed with the wonderful task or reading a book that we drop seeing everything else. We're fully aware of that moment, and we do it all naturally. It's not something new. It's not some sort of switching off or zoning out, or it's not about not thinking. A lot of people think it's stopping thoughts, but it's actually the complete opposite. It is complete full awareness and full concentration, opposed to the non-thinking. So it's available to all of us. It's not some special thing. We've all got the capacity. It requires no tools, no sign-ups, no money, no special anything. There's no gimmicks. There's no free steak knives. It's there for us every moment. You don't have to change at all. It just allows us to cultivate a better version of what we are and who we are today. That's all it is. So it really enables us to cultivate those universal human qualities that we've all got.
Sure.
Everybody can learn it, and it's just, we have this innate ability, but it just gets blocked. You know, it gets blocked with all these inner stories. So they hold us back so often. So we lose our ability to be open. We lose our ability to notice what's really going on, and we lose our objectivity, and we get carried away with things. And that really prevents us from being good mindful people. So it's always there. We've always got time to be mindful, and it's not a special thing at all. It's just a way of living. It's a way of being, and it cuts down all that needless stress and makes our lives hopefully a bit better as well.
Mm. It's an interesting concept. It really is, and I think we've all been there, where it's very much a case that we've got so much in our mind that we're racing with other things, or we're in a trance when we're reading a book, for instance, and we're not noticing something else that's going on in the corner of our eye or in the room or around us. We just don't notice it because we're actually fixed on what we're doing, and that's really what we need to be. But we need to fix on our awareness almost, don't we? So tell us about Mind the Gap, because there is a gap there, isn't there? So what sort of gap are we talking about?
Yeah, and it's a funny one. I've used this specifically because, of course, we all know Mind the Gap from the tube, and of course, it's in most rail. So there is often a gap between what things are really and how we think they are. Each of us is a product of experience. We've carried it from childhood. We've all been learning these habits from learnings from the past through our culture, from our experiences, from family life, school life, growing up, environment. All these learnings are in there somewhere. They're in that brain of ours somewhere. But of course, it's all hidden in our subconscious. And we don't realise where some of these perceptions and ways of viewing the world come from. They've just been imprinted over so long, so unconsciously, and it really changes the way we regard things and how we interpret. Try that one more time. It's really changes the way we interpret things, and we cast projections onto things to be a certain way based on these projections, and our perspectives, also our biases and our attitudes and opinions and habits come from all this inbuilt ingraining, and it starts from the moment we're born. In fact, some people are saying it starts in the womb. So mindfulness is taking off that lens, it's taking off that filter, and it's seeing the difference between all these they call it mental constructs of how we think things are from all this inbuilt, inherent imprinting that's happened since birth, and to drop all that and to see it clearly now and in the present. We take off these mental filters, these mental glasses, and see reality with our neutral awareness. So we still might see it with perceptions, but now we see it in a more neutral, accepting and non-judgmental way. And we've got the ability through that to decide, hang on, is this reality or is it my perception? Is it fact or fiction? Is it true or false? Because they get in the way of seeing things clearly. And when we're trying to be good leaders, we need to make good decisions.
Absolutely.
We need to think clearer. And these perceptions just get in the way. They absolutely get in the way of making good decisions, being with our colleagues, being completely aware of what's going on with our work, with our colleagues, with our organisation, with ourselves. And we just get stuck on this autopilot mode. And sometimes we find ourselves frustrated. I don't know if it's ever happened to you, Jenny.
Well, I found myself frustrated. Yes. Yes, I think that's a fact of life these days. It occurs quite often, really, doesn't it? And that's with the pace, and that's with the stresses that we put into us, into our life, and what we're doing and what we prioritise, all that sort of thing. So it's really great to bring this webinar to the market, really, where people can learn about mindfulness and really just take that breath, because what you touched on it there, really, about agile culture and leadership. You need to, to be able to lead, you need to have these abilities and these ways in your culture to understand, really. And if once you can make clearer decisions, you'll be able to, impart that knowledge, if you like, with the team that you're working with.
Absolutely. So we can drop all that mental baggage that quite often is causing frustration, because we quite often get frustration because we think something should be this way. We make a plan and we try to get that plan, and when it doesn't work out exactly as it is, we get frustrated because what we perceived was going to happen is different, and that causes these things. So we overthink things, and I've got this little thing there. You can see I've just popped it up. Thinking is overrated, or should I say not so much thinking is overrated, but overthinking. Because we overthink things too much rather than just being seeing ourselves and seeing the world through what is currently available to us now. So we can't control what's going to happen to us in our life, but we can certainly choose to think about, are we seeing it clearly? And then from that more clearer position, decide how we're going to interpret and how we're going to respond. We can choose what happens next, because we can see through when these perceptions are clouding our mind and say, I don't need to think that way anymore. I can drop it. I don't have to choose this reaction anymore. I can choose to respond more wisely with more awareness of what's really there rather than these cluttered thoughts that have come up. So, and of course, as you said, dealing with the onslaught of information is even better. Just that ability to focus and realize what we really need to focus on and drop everything else so we can learn to tune out all the things that are unhelpful.
Okay, we know there's a need for this. I think that's perfectly clear from our discussion so far. But let's look at the neuroscience side of it. Let's look at the facts. Let's look at the studies that are out there. Can we delve into that a little bit?
Sure. So just saying, first off, science is hard. And neuroscience in particular is really hard. So I'm going to leave most of the real scientific stuff. And yes, I am studying this and I am really in the midst of diving into it. But let's see if I can explain it very simply. And we probably all have heard the fight, flight or freeze reaction. It's an instinct that's been with us as we've evolved, and we've learnt this because we're born to maximise rewards and reduce that, and we've always evolved to look out for threats from our environment to survive. You know, cavemen's trying to avoid being eaten by saber-toothed tigers. So we have these instincts, and they're in a primeval part of our brain, and that part of the brain has no capacity for thinking, planning, logic. Our more modern neocortex, our modern brain in the front of behind our foreheads, what does all the decision making and reasoning. However, when we feel threatened, when we think someone's disagreeing with us, when we think someone's standing in the way of us achieving what we want, which is basically getting in the way of our reward centers, it's perceived as a threat, and it triggers the amygdala, which is that lower part of that primitive brain, to release all these neurochemicals. And they prepare our body for fight and flight, you know, run from the saber-toothed tiger or combat the invaders or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. So we get hijacked. We absolutely get hijacked with these neurochemicals and emotions, and it doesn't enable us to think clearly because suddenly the neocortex, the thinking brain, is put on hold while the amygdala is in control. So we get hijacked by this amygdala. So being more mindful enables us to say, hang on, have I just been hijacked by my amygdala? What's going on up there? Is it is it a perception? Am I really having a threat?
You've started a whole new way. We're going to be thinking that later on today. Have we just been hijacked by our amygdala? It's true, though.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
So when we can realise that that's happened, we can bring back control and we can stop the spiral of thoughts and emotions that cause us to get so caught up from all these neurochemicals, and we can return to some mental clarity. We can get back to normal, and we can say, hang on, the neocortex is back in the driver's seat. And remember, you know, these threats, they're not about saber-toothed tigers anymore. They're just what happens at work every day. When someone's disagreed with you, you thought that something was wonderful and they didn't think so. Triggers us. Oh, that's a threat to me, you know. So it's happening all the time. So there's a lot of ingrained habits that are learnt. So we can reduce this threat system and remain more calm, clear and focused because we have the ability in our mind to focus and sustain attention and bring back this attention control. But the problem is we have to notice that it's happened in the first place. And that's what mindfulness does. It enables us to become aware, because until we become aware of this amygdala hijack, we're going to stay in that state. And once we're aware, the neocortex can jump back in control. And the longer that we let it go on, the worse we're going to be spiraling out of control, telling ourselves all those inner stories that are not true, all those critical thoughts of ourselves and others. And we need to be able to stop that. And that takes the awareness. And that's what mindfulness is that complete awareness of what's happening right now, not just outside, but inside of our own self. And that's the trick.
Okay. Well, it's certainly powerful stuff. Let's talk about the evidence for a little bit, shall we? Because you've provided some amazing statistics that we've spoken about on the lead up to this webinar in terms of how it's reduced stress for people and how people have remained calm and how transformations have been successful because they've had more of a culture of mindfulness in their organisation, that kind of thing. So I think we're all very clear that mindfulness has a place definitely in culture and leadership and in individual and in all our behaviour. It makes sense for us all to take that breath, get our neocortex to kick in again and kick the amygdala in the back seat kind of thing, and say, no, we're back in control, and this isn't the saber-toothed tiger coming towards me, this is just my boss, if you like. I mean, I don't know, that's just a small example, I guess. Maybe. But maybe, yeah, who knows. But yeah, let's discuss some of the evidence. That would be really good.
Sure. So just as this slide says, right now, there's over 5,000 reasonably scientifically published studies. Now, they've come from many different facets, many different target study groups. So there are some specific ones around leadership, and they're the ones I'm going to focus on. So there is so much around. So the Institute of Leadership, 80 leaders from 12 separate organisations were participated in a 5-week mindfulness program. And at the end of it, 93% of these leaders said that the training had such a positive impact on their ability to create space for innovation. 89% said that the program enhanced their ability to listen to themselves and others. And nearly 70% that the training made such a positive difference in their ability to think strategically and more clearly. So this is just one of so many studies. So it's beyond just the peace and stress relief, which are definitely clear. Clarity, calmness and awareness comes, and that's where my glass of water on the right comes in, because we can let these thoughts settle, these things that cloud us, and we can see clearly instead of a muddy piece of muddy water. And so it can help us communicate, and there's health benefits because of this amygdala hijack. What those neurochemicals do to our bodies is also not very good for our health. So when we can stop those reactions, it can lower our blood pressure, help us heal and increase our immune response. And just 3 weeks ago here in Sydney, I was lucky enough to attend the Mindful Leadership Summit. And one of the speakers, Pauline Conroy from HSC Bank, she is the Global Liquidity and Cash Management Manager, the county head of client management, HSBC here in Sydney. So they've introduced a mindfulness program for their leaders. And this graph here is showing some of the responses that was, the way that they conducted this is they got the leaders to do a survey prior to the session, prior to the leadership study program, which was 6 weeks long. And then they came back after 10 weeks and asked them the same questions to see whether there'd been a difference. And you can see here, this is just a group of quite a lot of, I'm not quite sure what the numbers were. I haven't got it right in front of me, I apologise. So you can see there, the first one, the ability to collaborate and work well with others increased by 31% from what they thought they were doing before to after mindfulness training. Their resilience, i.e. dealing with stress and dealing with the onslaught, their resilience was up by 26%. Self-management and their own self-awareness, 22%. Focus and attention. Now, if we could have 20% better focus and attention, what do you think that might mean in productivity increase?
It would be incredible, wouldn't it? Yeah, it would really show up. It would be amazing.
And then, of course, motivation and some of the other things that are very important, which we're going to talk about with the leadership principles that the consortium has developed. You know, empathy, compassion, stress and well-being, our ability to work on ourselves. You can see that there's improvements all through those factors. And this is one of, as I said, more than 5,000 pieces of study that are out there at the moment. There's certainly a lot of links. If people are interested, then I can certainly provide many links to a lot of those studies, but you don't have to go far these days with Dr. Google on board. Just Google it.
Absolutely. Yeah, and you were showing me a parliamentary study the other day for the Britain's Parliament as well, weren't you?
That's right. There was a parliamentary inquiry into mindfulness studies and to find out whether it was real or not. So 130 parliamentarians were involved in the study, and very similar results to what you've just seen about the ability to focus on the task at hand without getting caught up, to be more objective and not be so reactionary. And there's all sorts of other benefits that they studied from many organisations which have adopted a mindfulness program to see what benefits can be realised and try to set it up as this is an actual legitimate form of program. It's not just, woo-woo.
No, absolutely. Absolutely not. No, it's here to stay, and we all need to really take note of it, I think, and able to, well, for our lives and our working environment to improve, and like you say, productivity to go up, our concentration levels to improve. I think it's very clear with all the studies, everything that's being done currently, and the increased awareness, I think, of mindfulness in its own state, really, which is it's quite ironic, really, isn't it? Let's face it. But I think we all need to take note of this. I think this will enable all of us. Let's talk for a bit, as you've turned the slide through, to what is the Agile mindset, because obviously the Agile Business Consortium have got the 9 principles of Agile leadership, and we've also got the 7 elements of the DNA cultural structure, as it were. So it's quite interesting if we can relate some of these directly to the principles.
Absolutely, because Agile, the mindset is one of collaboration. There's a wonderful, wonderful, quote by Lawrence Levy. I don't know if anybody knows who Lawrence Levy was. He was ex-Pixar CFO. He's now quit everything. He walked away from Pixar, walked away from Steve Jobs, walked away from Toy Story and all those wonderful animated movies to begin his own mindfulness center out the back hills of San Francisco. And he says, culture is critical to success. Talent is not enough. Collaboration is the unsung hero of excellent work, but we need the right people and the right listening, real listening. And that's what the Agile mindset's halfway about, because to be collaborative and to adopt growth and be positive and that learning, all those principles of the Agile manifesto, we need to be more mindful. There's just, when we think of just what we've been talking about, it's very easy to see that there's a correlation. To be able to collaborate well means we need to leave our ego at the door. But that's not easy to do, because as soon as we think we've left our ego at the door, someone jumps into that meeting and disputes a decision, and bang, there comes ego, jumps straight back on our back, and we're hijacked again. So it's a secret ingredient to help ourselves and our team to be more agile and not just go through the motions. So it needs awareness, definitely, to know if we're really collaborating, are we really listening, are we really being open, are we really focusing on value, are we just giving it lip service?
Yeah, absolutely. You touched there on the 9 principles as well of Agile leadership. Obviously, there we go. Yeah, it's very much founded on those the 3 C's of communication, commitment, collaboration. And like we've said, with good mindfulness, those will all be enhanced.
Absolutely, and that's what the real key is to good Agile. It's not about what you do; it's really about the attitude you have while you're working. From leadership all the way through, because leadership, of course, the leader's mood and the leader's attitude is going to so influence those that are around to follow us. So when we're trying to be leaders of any group, of course, more so in Agile, because Agile asks us to be more collaborative and to be more innovative and to be more creative, the leader's attitude can certainly influence how enabled the team is to do that.
Absolutely. Okay, so we've got probably about 10-15 minutes. If anyone's listening and they'd like to be asking us questions, please put them through on the system. We'll receive your questions, and I'll put them obviously to Kathy. She can read them too, and we'll have a moment at the end, probably about 10 minutes, when we can cover off questions. But what we're going to do now is probably look at those leadership principles. I don't know if we'll have time to go through all of them, in all honesty, Kathy, because time's kicking on in amazing speed. But it might be interesting to look at maybe the first few of them, definitely, to see how that can relate to mindfulness. So obviously, yeah, you've brought it up there. Actions speak louder than words. That is the Agile leadership principle 1, really. Actions speak louder than words. Explain how, I mean, in terms of with mindfulness, I think that's very, very clear. You've got to have a clear mind, like we've been saying.
Absolutely. And leaders, the most effective teams result because the leaders' investment in their own personal development, which is that second point there. If we're more self-aware, if we're able to self-manage our own emotions by noticing this hijack process I mentioned and being socially aware, we can cultivate better relationships and, of course, be the best versions of ourselves. And that's really what I think this one's all about. We need to know ourselves fully with a calm body, noticing we're okay and accepting, reducing all that noisiness that gets in the way of us being the real best person, and really understand that mindfulness is a foundational skill that underpins our ability to be this thing called emotional intelligence. And emotional intelligence is the ability to recognize our own and other people's emotions and use that to guide us and guide wise thinking and wise behavior, humble, empathetic, compassionate, and kind. We can't do that if we're not self-aware. It just doesn't exist. It can't be done. So we can bring our full authentic self to work, which will help us increase our own performance and those around us as well. If we encourage others to also think from this more deeper, more aware point of view rather than these subjective perceptions that we carry around with us.
Absolutely. And Gandhi put it fantastically well, didn't he? Be the change you want to see.
Absolutely. So it's all about asking ourselves, how am I responding to this now? How am I influencing other people now? How am I hearing this, noticing it, become more aware, and then choose the course of action by being more aware, which is really becoming more authentic, being more human. We talked about earlier, didn't we?
We did. We liked the idea of being more human. If you can take the idea of being human as in the positive human, obviously the humble, the empathetic, the compassionate human, the human that looks out for people, the human that's got a good soul, the human that's got a good heart, all this should come fairly naturally to that person, shouldn't they?
Yeah, and it's funny, it's all common sense, but common sense isn't common.
No. Yeah, it's remarkable, isn't it? It really is. Okay, so if we move on to another one of the principles, improved quality of thinking leads to improved outcomes. This is where, if you look into the Agile sense, the Agile leaders value high quality thinking, which obviously results in meaningful action.
Absolutely. And if we're not thinking clearly because we're clouded by all these memories and perceptions and things from the past that we're so unconscious of, and of course, if we're being distracted by things that don't matter, well, how can we possibly be thinking clearly and having good quality thinking? And that's what it's all about. So we can choose our thoughts. We actually have the ability, we have a choice to continue spiraling out of control with unhelpful thought processes and thought reactions, or we can stop ourselves and choose more wisely. So we need to get rid of all these clutters and concepts that lead us to jump to conclusions and don't register, because increasing our quality of thinking clearly correlates to informed decision making and better decisions as well, by removing these visual thinking processes and really think about really what's truly needed here, what's the right thing, what do we sense, what can we interpret, what can we really see from dropping all this noise and make a good decision and get rid of these mental junkyards.
There's plenty of them, I'm sure. Yeah, absolutely. Those mental junkyards have been, there's connotations in there, there's perceptions in there, there's experiences in there, there's feelings in there. And that, like you said, that junkyard kind of started with all that extra stuff as soon as we were born, as soon as we were on this world, and our culture has added to it. So, like you say, we just have to be clear on what we want, where we want, have a clear mind, have a clear awareness of our actions, I guess, like you say. And with this mindfulness technique, which is a technique that you can put into place any time of day, wherever you are, whether you're commuting into work, whether you're walking the dogs in the countryside, whether you're running around getting the children ready. It's just that moment where you can actually think, or when you're leading a team, for instance, as well, coming back into an agile organization or a transformation, whatever you've got going on, you can really do this, and it can really make a difference. Obviously, those studies and those statistics are proving that 5,000 studies that are going on currently on this. It's amazing numbers, and it's growing all the time, because this seems to be the pathway, if you like, to better benefits, I think, for organisations and for individuals.
Fantastic, absolutely. I might skip through some of these because some of them are kind of obvious. Emotion is a foundation to enhance creativity and innovations. So we inspire others to bring their best self to work, but how about we bring our best self to work ourselves first? Because you need to acknowledge emotions of ourselves and others, so we can be more accessible, more humble, and more authentic in the way that we work. And quite often, when we think of design thinking processes, etc., it's that ability to stop and pause and to get in touch with these inner senses that creates these spaces where new ideas and creativity can come up. There's a lot of study on innovation and how mindfulness helps it, but this is probably not the time to go into that. I might just move to that collaborative one, because that's, when we think of Agile and Mindful Agile, which is the movement that I'm really passionate about, is, we really need collaboration. There's a wonderful leadership saying that says strategy without execution is a daydream, execution without strategy is a nightmare. But I say, well, either without collaboration is unsustainable. There's no getting stuff done without good collaboration. So the rise and fall is based on the team, and we need to show that. We need to support our teams to be inclusive, strengthen them, and that means we need to be more aware of what's actually happening with this team. We must learn to listen mindfully and stop and be present for them and make conversations matter. So we need that self-awareness to recognise and identify feelings and emotions, respond to them skillfully, and also work with people so they can also benefit from that point of view.
Yeah, okay, fantastic. And number 9, we've got there. Great ideas can come from anywhere in the organisation. I think that's a really important one, because that kind of obviously in the leadership and the culture, I think within the Agile organisation, and what we're really seeing now is great ideas can come from anywhere. It doesn't necessarily need to come from the board. It doesn't need to come from the C-suite or anything like that. It can come from, I don't know, the people that look after and take your rubbish out, the people that do the recycling. It's like it, and it's your stakeholders. It's not necessarily the inner group of the organisation. It's the stakeholders. It's everybody you touch with your organisation, with what you're doing, with your product, with your service, with your offering, as it were. It really can. So I think it's a really important one.
Absolutely, because when we're not being mindful, we're not being open, and we need to change that with this particular one and be open to what everybody else can bring, what ideas to explore, and let go of some of our own perception, our own ideas, and so we can listen more deeply and be genuinely there for others, and that's really key. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Okay, so how do we do this? I mean, it really is easy as taking a breath, chilling out, and trying to get rid of the clutter in your mind and focusing. Tell us how.
Yeah. So it's a bit like training a muscle. So there's 2 ways to train: informal and formal. So everyday awareness is as simple as you just said, Jenny. Honestly, just being able to, well, firstly become aware and stop yourself, to bring yourself back and say, what am I aware of? Am I perceiving things? Am I judging things? Or am I really seeing things clearly? Am I seeing through this lens of perception, or am I seeing reality? Have I got a gap between what I'm seeing? And have I been hijacked by my amygdala that's caused me to spiral these thoughts out of control? So that's everyday awareness. And just like going to the gym, the more that we work out, the bigger the muscle or the stronger the muscle gets. Our mind is exactly the way. We can train ourselves. We train our bodies for peak performance in sports, but how about our own minds? So it needs to be a bit of a mental workout.
Okay. All right. Interesting.
So every day we can just come back to the present, anywhere, anytime, just taking 3 breaths with complete awareness, dropping what's there, noticing what is, getting in touch with what is now, and reset ourselves to see things more clearly. And you can see there's some examples there, and of course it's any time. And you told me about a wonderful example that you have.
What was that one? When I'm walking the dogs, or when I'm chasing the children, or
all of those things.
Yeah.
So we can do it any time, and even when we're drying our hands under the dryer.
Oh, that's right. Yes, I did. Absolutely. We have I'll share it with everybody. I don't mind at all. We have a hand dryer here in the bathrooms at our offices, and I've heard many people come in back to the office and complain that that hand dryer is really bad. It doesn't dry your hands, and obviously they're putting their hands under it for probably about two seconds or something, and expecting them to be dry, like, you know, one of the really fast ones that almost like takes the skin off your hands. You know, those ones, and everyone covers their ears. But we haven't got one of those. We've got more of an old-fashioned one that gives a little bit of air, I guess. But when I've used the bathroom, I wash my hands now, and I stand there, and I just, yeah, I do. I take a few breaths, and I go, okay, this is going to take about 20 seconds, but I'm going to have this moment just to clear my mind and think. So there we go. That's my mindfulness moment that I've just shared with everybody.
Exactly. So it's that ability to pause and to moment by moment check in with your brain, to be able to reset and refocus on what really needs to be focused on and what can you drop.
That's right.
And that's what the main thing is. That's the main practice, is checking in with that brain and saying, hey, what's going on up there? What's going on up there?
It's just that moment.
Focus.
Exactly. It's just that moment where you stop and you want to, you know, you're going to get your cognitive thinking working again, and you kind of go, right, focus. And I prioritize. I mean, I do. Obviously, that's very much an agile method as well, with Moscow and that sort of thing. Prioritize, and so that's a really good way of doing it too.
Absolutely. And that's not a prerequisite of mindfulness, but certainly meditation definitely helps. Just like going to the gym, you work out your muscle. Meditation is like going to the gym. So your day-to-day mindfulness will become easier and more natural. It won't be such a struggle. You'll be able to observe and pick up when your focus has drifted or you're being hijacked. You can pick it up easily because you've got a stronger mind muscle, which is what meditation does. So we're not going to have a chance to do one now, but 10 minutes per day or even 5 minutes per day can make a massive influence. So it's not some special thing. It's not some elevated state. It's just really a very simple thing of just basically open monitoring of what's happening. We hold our attention, we focus on it, and then we just notice when it strays, and we just keep bringing it back. And that's what meditation of the breath quite often does, is we focus on the breath, and we don't have to do anything special, just focus on it, and then we just have to figure out and notice, did we stray, did we get caught up with thought? And if we did, gently bring it back. And it sounds easy. The main point with meditation is it's not to be a good meditator. It's about the effect it has on our day-to-day. So it enhances our day-to-day mindfulness. So it's really, really quite a beneficial thing to learn. And when we start, we might think we're absolutely terrible. Our minds are crazy, but that's normal. It's always been like that. We're just able to notice it now. So when you notice it, you can do something about it. You've got that ability to choose.
That's what I like about it, really. It's an individual thing. You've got that ability to choose. You've got that ability to, if you wish to, carry on at the rate of knots and have your amygdala take over and run riot and the cortisol or whatever it is as well, which is one of the enzymes or something that your brain kicks in, which isn't good. It's the flight and fight. You were saying adrenaline, cortisol, all that, and we don't really know what that is going to do to your body long term if that keeps dripping all the time into your mind. So that's a concern. I've heard of that before, which is a concern because we're all going at that speed. So bringing it back to organisations, though, like we were saying, we've actually had a question through from Lisa. She works for a financial institution in London, and she's saying it's all sounding amazing, and it is, and she's going to take that time to breathe a little bit more and really put herself into the moment, as it were. But organisationally, she's asking what steps can they take to instill a more mindful culture to become more productive in their organisation, do you think?
Awesome question. And it's something that's more and more becoming the norm. It's not something unheard of now in organisations. Big organisations such as SAP, eBay, Huffington Post, the British Army, these are not small organisations, have seen the benefits. So it's really about starting to inform people of the benefits. And it's in the nicest possible way, creating that business case to give people the skills, the tools that they need so individuals can be more mindful, but supplementing that with saying, actually, mindfulness is okay. we support you. We might set up an area where you might be able to go and spend a few minutes to regain your thoughts. Perhaps in a meeting, using a bell or something to say, come on guys, let's get back and be mindful, and using these tools and techniques, and making that an accepted part of the way we work. But to do that, unfortunately, the first thing has to come with a little bit of education and a little bit of a program to give people these skills and knowledge to enable them to be more mindful in their organisation. So it does come by first starting with the business case of showing, well, there is so many productivity gains, not just in individuals, but things like reduction in time off from sickness and stress, that can really help create that sound business case to enable us. So being a more mindful organisation is one that supports individuals becoming more mindful and really finding ways in the processes and the activities that we do to encourage people to stop and take that breath and come back and drop some of those perceptions.
Yeah, thank you very much for that question, Lisa. That was a very good one, and it covers really some of the other questions that are there. Funnily enough, people are asking the same thing. We've got Jake from a retail outlet, a well-known retail outlet in Liverpool, I think it is, there as well. So they're asking the same thing. So I think that collectively can kind of cover that in the respect that it is the culture of an organisation. You have to embed it into the culture, really, don't you?
Absolutely. There's, as you said, there's that parliamentary paper that has been created, and I'm pretty sure that if I'll double check the permissions, but it is public domain, it's been released to the public, it might be a really good resource, because it actually speaks about how do you create the business case for mindfulness and mindfulness programs to go ahead, and how does mindfulness get embedded into an organisation's culture, because it is a cultural change from keep going, don't stop, you haven't got time, and just go. And how do we encourage people to say, look, emails, you check them once an hour, not every time they come in, and expect that, if something's important, we go and talk to people and not let ourselves be distracted, and finding ways in our day-to-day job that the whole organisation and our teams and our leaders are encouraging everybody in the organisation to become more mindful, which then results in us becoming a mindful organisation to reap the benefits of productivity and creativity, innovation, and let me not just say people being happier and motivated, and that is the best side effect. If nothing else, if you can be happier, who wouldn't want that?
Absolutely. I mean, that's a success in itself, isn't it? Being happy. I mean, if we're looking at the individual elements to mindfulness, and then the organisational, it's obviously for the organisation, it's productivity. For the individual, it's being happy. But both of them would be win-wins, really, wouldn't they?
Yeah, well, happy people who are motivated at work and happy at work and feel supported and well at work and not stressed are more productive by default. That doesn't need any mindfulness studies to show that correlation, because that's long been established that happier people are more productive people. So if we can help individuals become happier and less stressed and less anxious without changing anything else, suddenly we've probably enabled better results in everything that we're doing.
Absolutely, yeah. Let's look through this elements of mindful success that's on the screen currently, because this is something that we've worked on and we've put together. That it's not linear necessarily, but these links, if you like, all play their part, don't they?
Absolutely, and they're not meant to be seen as steps. It's easy to kind of think of them as steps, but they're not really meant to be. You can see that they are interrelated and interdependent to each other. So just walking through very clearly, how does mindfulness enable success? Obviously, that's what we were talking about at the beginning. And it starts off with, hang on, what are we trying to do here? Let's set our goals. What's our intention? Set them clearly, and make sure that they are clear and they're not clouded with silly perceptions. So we start off with mindfulness even there by being clear about what it is we're trying to achieve, not what we think we need to achieve because of some silly projection that we've got. So if we can do that, what happens with objectives is when we've got them clearly set in the front of my mind, that will drive what we do or don't pay attention to. I'm going to pay attention to the things that will help me achieve that objective, and I'll ignore the things that don't. So it really helps us focus our attention in the first place and really notice what is or is not going to help me here. So that's kind of, in a way, it's not really a step, but it's a part of the link. And of course, our attention is all about then drives and influences what we become aware of. And that's the mindfulness. When we said at the beginning of the webinar, I should say, mindfulness is a simple awareness of what's here and what's now. How mindful we are is going to be able to notice, are we paying attention to the right things or not? We become aware of, are we actually doing the right things here? And once we learn that, once we can figure out what's really going on, we can then choose, do I continue this course of action or not? Do I continue this thought process? Do I continue to behave in this way? Or do I choose something different that's more in line with my objective, which is the choice aspect there? And of course, if we've got ability to choose more wisely, then obviously the actions that we actually do, the right actions, are selected more wisely. And if we select better actions that are more in line with all the other pre-links, then hopefully the ability to get to success is more likely, because all other elements have been aligned correctly through the mindfulness that underpins. Yes, there's a mindfulness link, but there's mindfulness that underpins the whole lot. And of course, if the results aren't exactly right, start from scratch, set the next objective and start and iterate, which is very, very agile.
Very agile, absolutely. Yep, absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. And if it's not going to work, fail fast and move on. Absolutely. Yeah.
And set the next objective and go through again.
This is very handy actually to have this this slide. And what we're actually going to do, if anybody would like a copy of this, I can send this out to everybody listening. That's no problem at all. So just send me an email through to jenny@agilebusiness.org, and I'll be happy to send that out to you. We're also, I think, going to put this on our social media, Kathy, because I think this kind of encapsulates everything we've been talking about, and people can relate to this with organisation, with themselves, with individual kind of state, as it were, if they've got something they need to be doing, and that attention, the mindfulness, the choice, the action, it's all there really. And I think the clarity there is fantastic as well.
Fantastic. That's really great. And it's really a little cheat sheet of showing how we really need to pay attention, be more aware, and then drive better, wiser choices that will obviously lead us to achieving our success, our objective, and ultimately success, even if that objective is just simple stress relief.
Well, that could be the objective, but it would get to success, wouldn't it? Your stress would be relieved, and you'd be in the moment, and you'd be able to have clarity and clear your mind from the other stuff that's not helping you. It's not helping you move forward in any way, shape or form. And in terms of an organisation, I think is so powerful for them to realise. And for some, it is a realisation, isn't it? Some C-suite executives, for instance, that they're still sort of cottoning on to this idea that the monumental differences it could actually make to their organisation. So we're out there informing organisations about this, and we'd like to talk to anybody really that's interested.
Absolutely. Fantastic. And there's a wonderful quote. I can't remember the gentleman who said it, but it's one of my favourite quotes, which I love to end or sum up a little bit, is to always be mindful, even if your mind is full.
Yes, you'll have to come up with your own one as well. I think that will be the next thing. We'll have a Kathy Berkidge quote. That would be great, and we can put that on our social channels as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us. It has been a very enlightening and mindful, and we're all completely aware now, and we can all take action, and we can all drive our success, which we really appreciate. So thank you for your time, because it's way into the evening for you now there in Melbourne.
It's an absolute pleasure. This is something I'm passionate about. I'm passionate about Agile. I'm passionate about driving teams to success, and I'm very passionate of people becoming the best versions of themselves. So it's an absolute pleasure to talk about this anytime.
Brilliant. Okay, well, thank you again for joining us. We have run out of time. We do have a few more questions, but what we can always do is we can send them email messages and answer those in due course, which won't take us long at all. So we can talk about those afterwards. But we have run out of time now. But like I said, it's been delightful, and thank you so much, Kathy, for joining us and sharing your expert knowledge on mindfulness. 20 years in the industry is just incredible, and for you to join us and help us on our journey to understand it, we really, really appreciate it.
Anytime. Thank you for having me.
No problem. So if anyone out there would like to ask further questions or want more information on the subject, please come through to either Jenny at agilebusiness.org, or you can come through to the info, which is info@agilebusiness.org. More information about mindfulness will be able to be found on our website also in due course, which is agilebusiness.org for the website. Incidentally, mindfulness is also going to be playing its part in the Agile Business Conference that's going to be happening next year. And Kathy, I know you were with us this year, weren't you, doing some seminars and workshops that were opening people's minds really to this whole topic then, weren't you?
Absolutely. It was it seemed to be really well received, with about 50 or so people coming through for a half-day seminar. I think it was quite successful, so it'd be lovely to see more people getting into mindfulness, without a doubt.
Fantastic. Well, I appreciate your time, like I said, and it's clear, the passion that you have behind this topic, and we're a little bit more in the know about it. And like you say, we don't need money. There's no tools for this. That it really is just a case of take those moments to consider, to find that clarity, and clear your mind, and become into that mindfulness way of being, and you will reap the benefits really clearly.
Absolutely, without a doubt.
Okay, well, we'll sign off. But again, thank you very much. And we'll be speaking to you again very soon.
Thank you, everybody. And good morning and good evening to those in Australia.
Good morning, good evening. We'll be back with another webinar. The next webinar we're having is actually next month. It's going to be on culture and leadership. I believe it's happening on the 17th of January. So please look out for that information. Agile Culture and Leadership on the 17th of January. All information coming through to me at jenny@agilebusiness.org. Thank you very much, and we'll be speaking to you again soon.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.